Hello, I am Chris Gazdick, and we are here with Mr. Adam Cloninger, the co-host. I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist. You have landed on Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where we offer personal insights from a therapist in your own home or personal time in your car. So, personal insights and what do I say? So, seeing the world through the lens of being aware it's not delivery of therapy services, I've always liked to say. Help us out with reviews, 5 stars on Apple iTunes and comments. They really help us out a lot. If you listen to us on Apple iTunes, you can subscribe to us on Spotify just kind of as well, because that's a way to help us out. Contact at throughatherapisteyes.com is a way to kind of interact with us. And we got books on there, Neil. We got, different things that are search buttons to kind of look at different cool shows. And I'm in the habit of really thanking you guys for being a part of what we do on Through a Therapist's Eyes, because you make us the international podcast that we are. So it's pretty cool there. I figured we'd talk about families today a little bit, given that it's the holiday times and, holidays have a lot to do with families. And then I thought, we haven't talked about substance abuse a lot. And I thought, well, that happens a lot in the holiday seasons. People trip out with substance abuse. But y'all beat me to the punch before we turned the mics on. Now, let's rewind a little bit to last week. I am not beyond eat and crow. I am not beyond taking responsibility for talking a little bit of crap. I didn't even talk that much crap, but if you recall, now I'm actually a little bit resentful about
this would be a good time to plug in last week's episode, a part where he was talking about it, where he said, next week you're blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because we have a fantasy football new member team guy named Neil Robinson that I played last week. My resentment is I just found out, y'all. So if you don't know, fantasy football, you kind of keep your players, you play against your teammates, and you kind of figure out, at the end of the year who has the best record, and points are a big factor in everything. Well, evidently, this little jack boy over here is sitting there realizing when I brought it up that he didn't set his team. So as I'm talking about the game that he and I are about ready to play, he won because I reminded him. And I'm upset about that, Neil.
So he outsmarted you?
He listened.
No, I won because my tight end scored as much as your quarterback.
There is that, too. Now, I'm curious. Did you have a player in or whatever that wasn't playing and some injured people? I mean, what did you replace? Be honest now.
I don't think I really actually messed up, because I put a wrong player who was actually out at one point, thinking that I'd have time to replace him. So I was even down another person.
See, I would have won if I hadn't said anything.
So you still would have lost.
You did the math.
So what I heard is he beat you by accident.
He won. Congratulations, Neil. You got it. I'm really going to be upset if your first time in the league and you get the. Can I say that on the air? I guess I can. Whatever. It's fantasy football. We're real people. The big prize is the Hillbilly Moonshine Stein. If you get the Hillbilly Moonshine Stein this first year that you're playing in our league, I am going to be upset. I will bring
it every time we record.
That would be terrible.
So is that like your trophy? You have a hillbilly? What do you call it?
It's the Hillbilly Moonshine Stein. Yeah, that's the winner of the league for the year. It's like the Stanley Cup trophy, man. I mean, I've had it once or twice. Yeah, so. Anyway, congratulations, Mr. Robinson. You won the fantasy football game.
Do they play like deliverance music in the background when you're like awarded that prize? Or?
No, I have swallowed enough crow. We're moving on.
All right. What are we talking about tonight?
We are moving on. So families with addiction, an emotional reality called survivor mode. It's really a concept that I thought combines a few things together. The family dynamics and boundaries and stuff during the holidays. We haven't talked a lot about addiction, in a little while, and that's a big part of what we cover, what I see in my therapy office and work with. And so combining that together is this idea called survivor mode. And I'm going to kind of go through the descriptions of it, how it works, but it's bottom line basically, the dynamics that you see in families with substance abuse. Warning is, when I go through it, and I'm curious how we'll interact with it, Adam, because when I go through it, a lot of times people get kind of confused about it. They get sort of like lost a little bit. And so I don't use the survivor mode stuff in therapy a whole lot because of that.
Okay.
instead, I just use the dynamics of family and what happens, and we kind of work on, the emotional issues of shame and boundary setting and, that kind of stuff that happens a lot in those types of family units. But it's still very much in my mind, and if it makes sense, maybe I'll start using it again. Sound game?
Sure.
So first of all, we got a few shows that are really good, and if you're listening to this one, you want to kind of tune back. Especially episode 8, Substance Abuse and Addiction, What It Is and What It Isn't, is a really good one because we just laid out deep dive on what is substance abuse. And actually, I think I've decided I'm not really going to touch on that a whole lot at all today. So I'm assuming that we understand a little bit about addiction, exactly what the title is, what it is and what it isn't. If you don't, just push pause. Go pop back to that, and you'll get a good understanding of the actual individual because we're talking about the family today. And then also, episode 64, Addiction and Family Dynamics. I'm going to touch on probably some of those, but it's only partly a segment. And we took a deep dive on that as well, looking at something that's really cool in family units that's creepy. From family unit to family unit, every story is unique, and every person is unique, and every family has its own unique characteristics and stuff. But for whatever reason, man, particularly with substance abuse, when you get family dynamics involved in thinking about it, it's like mapped out almost. People have reactions to it, and you fit into very specific roles. I'm not sure how much I'll go into that, but we'll touch a segment on that, but that show goes deep on it. And then lastly, the Shame Sucks one that we just did. That wasn't with you, that was right
It
before
was
you.
not, and I tell you, I love that title. I mean, if I just saw just that title, I'd be like, what is this? I got to check this out, just not even knowing what it's about.
Well, we're going to talk about how that works in families a little bit, but it is such a huge part of what happens with family dynamics. So shame is like, I don't know if I'm willing to call it the biggest area of family dynamics with addiction, but it probably pretty much comes real close to it. I forgot to start my thing, Neil, so can you tell me how many minutes
You're probably like 3-4 minutes in.
34 minutes.
I'm guessing.
That's it? No, it's more than that. 7. I thought it was more than that. Okay.
3 and plus 4, 7.
Yeah, I got to like time
Okay.
stuff. This is actually like a therapy session in that way. I am constantly thinking, what time is it? How much time do we have left? And a little behind
Is
the
this
scenes
why you
through
asked me to be
therapy
on this show?
What's it? No.
Who needs to be talked with? Adam, let me ask him.
That guy will work out well. The answer to that, audience, is no. Looking into the camera, no. But it is kind of a cool little behind the scenes. My brain is constantly aware of, like, what time is it in the session? How far in are we? Do we have enough time to deal with this issue? And of course, it's inevitable that something huge comes up like 55 minutes into the session, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? How do I button this up?
You're going to have a part 2
repair
next week.
Right? You move on from that, but it is kind of tricky, and I'm always mindful of that. Well, I do the same thing on the show. I mean, I'm constantly aware of what time it is. So how much time do we have for this part, this segment, that segment? It's just a therapy skill, I guess.
When do you get you like a clock over here or something?
Yeah, start it up. Yeah, so it will be on time.
When he says go, and I'll just hit the button.
Yeah, because I'm like,
That way you can just kind of check it
I
out.
forget to hit the button. I'm into what I'm talking about. Anyway, so where do we go here? Maybe I just kind of ask you. Well, that's obvious. I think I won't do that. I mean, what does survivor mode mean to you? But it's like an obvious title. It's just interesting to me the way that it plays out in these family dynamics and relationships.
So what do you mean, like if things are, say your family's having somebody that's addicted to, you're talking about how you handle things differently because your family's in survival mode? Is that what you're talking about?
Kinda,
Trying to hold the
yeah.
family together?
Right.
Okay.
Those types of things.
Okay.
And actually, that's probably a good point to make that I didn't think about. But just you saying that sentence made me think about this probably really relates more to a mom or a dad specifically, the survivor mode concept. Not so much when you're a parent and you have a child that has addiction. This is more when you're the kids and your parents have drug or alcohol addiction.
Okay.
So that is a qualifier that I'm going to put here.
Okay.
We'll still talk about family dynamics and different things going on, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, oh yeah, I'm an expert, I got it, I know it all. So are you a know-it-all with substance abuse? 1 being, I really barely know what you mean when you say addiction or whatnot. Where are you at, would you say?
So you say 10's an expert and
Yeah.
a 1's nothing?
No, 10 is a know-it-all.
10's a know-it-all.
Yeah.
12, no, I'm just kidding. I'm going to say like maybe 7, 8, maybe.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
A good bit.
Yeah.
Okay. How so? That's a lot. That's a lot. How so, and where does that come from so that we can know where your head is at through this
Well, I mean,
conversation?
I know people who's had to deal with that. So,
Yeah.
and they've talked with me, and I've had some things I've known about my own family life that I know where that's
So
like.
a lot, you would say maybe a lot of personal experience per se?
I won't say a lot of personal experience, but I mean, yeah, there's some personal experience there.
Or something, yeah, okay. Well, all I'm getting a gauge on is, people that you know and people that
Right.
you've experienced this with. Because the reason being is because a lot of people, we're not going to have time to talk about what is addiction and what isn't. Please do tune into to episode 8, and we probably have more episodes on the show list for that because it is so misunderstood. So misunderstood. I'd almost like to do a personal experiment with you to listen to 8 from long ago and then ask you that question again and see what you thought from that.
To find out if I'm
Off
really
the-
a 7 or 8 or if I'm
yeah,
a 2.
off the mics what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
but that would be a fun thing to ask you about this week if you think about it, because there are so many myths and misconceptions and misunderstandings about what this is. Man, people talk about addiction nowadays. I mean, it's cool that people are thinking about it, but a lot of times people are talking about addiction. It ain't addiction. It's not. There's a lot of substance abuse that people are disruptive with their lives with alcohol and even weed and even sometimes drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of conversations over the years. I think, Neil, before you were even with us, Craig and I kicked this around a lot as we brought up substance abuse issues, and I would ping off of him over that year or two of him learning what it is and what it isn't. He struggled with that.
So you're saying something like to the effect of not necessarily the actual addicted to the drug, but using the drug as an escape, or vice versa. You're saying,
Yeah, it's really not kind of vice versa. It's a lot of people will. Yeah, we'll get into down a bunny trail with that I don't want to spend time on today. But how do I be short? Like, people will use it as an escape. People will use it as a coping mechanism, and that does not necessarily mean addiction. Addiction has very specific things that we're looking for. There are symptom sets that I find even a lot of professionals get a little bit twisted on, talking about an abuse or a misuse of stuff as addiction, and it's not. Addiction has a whole series of sets of control over your life is the big thing.
okay, now I'm a 4.
Yeah, well, okay. Is that a joke or?
No. Actually, I'm like, okay. You got to explain that to me a little bit.
Yeah. I bet your number would come down if you
Okay.
listened to it, but maybe not that far. I don't know. So that is what we're not going to be able to deal with. Describing a family with addiction is there. So there are some bigger characteristics that I want to kind of maybe set us up with. Now, all told, there's this lady named Claudia Black, and in the 80s, she did a lot of groundbreaking work on family dynamics and what goes on in addictions. Because in the 60s and 70s, we started learning a lot about addiction, but nobody really did anything with the family. And now, I think it's pretty well known. Yeah, have you heard the statement, addiction is a family disease, or is a family issue? No? Okay, that's interesting to me. It is.
I mean, I can relate to that and understand
Obviously,
that.
it affects the whole family.
Right.
So maybe it's a bit of a no-brainer, but people have called it a family disease for the reasons that everyone is really sucked into this. Metaphor for addiction applies here. I have used the metaphor of addiction being a black hole, right? So it sucks all the emotional and physical resources from a person's life and all those people that are close to it, right? So emotionally, you get sucked in. Physical resources just get sucked into this person's web of so destructive reality that addiction creates. So that's a metaphor that gives you a little bit of thinking. But Claudia Black, back to her, she did a lot of groundbreaking work. So if you want to get some good stuff, Claudia Black. We'll have that on the show notes. I think some of her stuff. She's got great books and materials out there. She talks about don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. It's a big area of
What's that all
understanding when you think about what happens in these types of families. So this is a little segment on just a little bit of addiction and a little bit about family dynamics with it. Don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. Those are like inherent rules that become understood when you are in a substance abuse family. They stand for what they mean, but what do you take from that? How can you imagine that playing around, if that makes any sense to you?
Well, my first question is, what's the don't talk all about? I mean,
Right?
you got to tell me what you're meaning by that.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. Because I feel like it stands for what it means. That's where, okay.
Well, I mean, this is probably going to be wrong, but I'm saying,
Okay, go ahead.
don't talk. Don't be telling people what's going on, which I'm thinking.
Part of it.
I'm not so sure I understand that completely.
Part of it.
Don't trust. Don't trust other people's advice, or what? I mean, where are you going with that? And then don't feel. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting that you went that way, and I'm glad you asked directly, what do you mean by don't talk? Imagine yourself being 6 years old, and I'm going to go against the myth that men are always addicted. Moms absolutely have drug and alcohol addictions as well. Imagine yourself as this 6-year-old kid, and mommy's there. She does life. She wakes you up and takes you to school or whatever, but mommy tends to get liquored up. And when mommy gets liquored up, she acts weird. She sometimes gets really angry, and she'll yell, and she's in fights with daddy, and I don't really understand what they're going on with. And maybe this 6-year-old begins to notice, oh, well, mommy's doing this drinking thing, and when mommy has that coffee cup with ice in it, that looks a little weird.
She acts a little different.
Yeah, and I don't like it. It doesn't feel right.
Right.
So what is a normal situation when a kid doesn't feel right? What do? Well, mommy, why is things weird? Why are you screaming? Right?
Right.
No. In a substance abuse family, you learn very quickly when you do that, all hell comes down.
Right.
It is not okay.
Right. Because you're calling them out.
You're calling them out, and that is not okay. So you learn very quickly you do not talk about it. You do not talk. There's an elephant in the room. You know that metaphor.
Right.
That's where that metaphor comes from, the substance abuse field. No one talks about the elephant. It's a disruptive force in our lives. It's a disruptive force in our rooms. It's a disruptive force in our emotions. And we know it down to our bones, but nobody will call out the fact that there's an elephant here. That metaphor comes from the substance abuse field. So it's a very, very powerful rule. Same thing with trust. It's unreliable. Mommy may show up for the dance class, but mommy may not show up for a dance class.
Right.
How many times have I been let down? You told me I can stay up till 9 o'clock when you were having a conversation with me last night.
Right.
Well, last night mommy was drunk. She had a blackout and she didn't know it, and it's 9:30 and you're getting crushed for it. It's this type of
Mommy's supposed to pick me up today, but she forgot.
Dad. Now you're calling dad. Right.
Yeah.
You cannot talk about it. You cannot trust. And by all means, you really learn because all of the feelings are buzzing around. Just numb out. Now you're not going to feel. And you learn because it's chronic, unpredictable reality in your home that we're not going to feel anything. It's so sad when I started learning about these types of things because little kids, and I've had them in therapy, we've dealt with this and talked about this, and I can tell you it plays out really in real ways. They won't bring their friends over. You know, little sleepovers?
Right.
Little Johnny has his buddies and we play PlayStation all night.
Because they're scared what's going to happen.
They're not going to bring anybody home.
Right.
They're not going to have anybody see quite likely the realities that are, I mean, maybe a fine evening. It might be great.
And the parent didn't understand that.
They have no clue.
Little Johnny, won't you bring little Bobby over?
I'm going to go to Bobby's house.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, Bobby's mom said I could come sleep over. Is that
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
And you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. It's powerful. It is so sad. And you're right. They're none aware of it. And then I made a note to myself, like you really have to understand in family dynamics like this, the level of shame is just profound. It is something that gets sort of ingrained or embedded into your spirit.
So you're talking about like as far as like the kid being, I guess, ashamed that their parent is acting that way, or
Ashamed is, I'm glad you asked it that way. Perfect, because ashamed is, I'm ashamed of you, Adam, because you're such a terrible co-host.
right?
I don't want to tell anybody that he was here
Right.
this night. I'm ashamed.
Only got a couple more weeks and you have a break.
For 5 whole months. That sucks. Shame is, I'm doing something wrong. And
Right.
I'm full of shame because I haven't been a good enough host to enable you to be great. Right?
Okay.
Shame is I've done, we took a deep dive on it on a show, but I'm glad we're reviewing it because it's so super powerful here. I've done something that's against my moral code. I've done something that's dishonest. I've done something that is bad or wrong, right? I feel shameful. That's the core of what happens with shame. Back to little Johnny and Mommy, if I bring something up and say, well, Mommy, why are you acting weird? What's going on? I'm fine. Oh. Well, there's something wrong with me then, because clearly I'm all jacked up feeling weird. So I am bad. I am wrong. I am faulty. I might even be causing the problem because you just yelled at me.
Well, you also got to think too. They might not, if that discussion came about when the parent was not all jacked up or whatever, they may not remember what happened last night. And when it's brought up, they may get defensive because they don't really truly understand what was going on the night before.
You're on point. They have no clue. They literally don't even remember. Or if they do remember, it's hazy. Or to a lesser extent, if they do remember very clearly, it's kind of like, dude, I don't want to answer that question.
Right. So they get angry.
I don't want to have this conversation. So yeah, I'm just going to get pissed off.
Yeah.
And defensive. And again, you can't talk about it. You don't feel anything, and you dang sure don't trust what's in front of you. It is. Kids have amazing experiences in therapy when we begin to work on these things when they become adults. Here's another really cool thing that occurs to me. The reason why that's the case is because, listen, if you have a parent that is alcohol or drug related troubles, I can almost promise you have some of these things flowing around in your subconsciousness, in your psychology, and maybe even in your awareness. But you've normalized it, right? We just experience our family as being normal, is the way it is. Particularly when you're young. When you're 10 years and younger, you have no idea what other families operate like. It's just, this is it. And so think about a decade long of normalizing something, wondering about something as a teenager, and not being able to really figure it out, and then creating your own family in your 20s or 30s.
I'm trying to piece it all together.
The emotional impacts just string right through that person's life. It's amazing to me, which is where there's a generational impact as well. Why it's a family disease and family issue. God, it's a big deal. It's just a big deal. Okay, same segment, but let's look back a little bit at, just like shame, we can't talk about family dynamics without codependence. We gotta talk about codependence. Now, I know you've heard of that phrase before. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious what's on the street. You're such an expert at what's on the street, Adam. That was a joke.
Yeah.
That was a bad joke?
Bad joke.
It wasn't terrible,
it's
though,
okay.
was it?
Nobody's buying it. I'm Santa Claus, man. Nobody's buying it.
You are looking like Santa Claus, man. Love the beard development. You're my idol. I'm going to see if I can kind of get back down to that point. The cameras are showing. Yeah, you got the Santa Claus beard going. That's coming in nicely. All right, what do they say on the street that codependence is, says you?
Exactly what you're referring to.
No. Do you have an idea what codependence is?
Probably not. The more you're talking about this, the more I'm thinking now I'm like a 3 or a 2 now.
Oh, no. Seriously?
Yeah.
We did a show on codependence, I think, Neil, and I didn't write that up, and I want that to be on here. Can we get that? Can we get that number? I also actually literally have a whole chapter in my book on codependence because I feel like it's such a big component of life, not even just through substance abuse, but in a lot of ways we fall into codependent traits. I almost feel like this is a note to therapists out there. Whoever's in charge of the DSM and whatever, I feel strongly that this should be a diagnosable ICD-9 condition. I really do. There's not a lot of biological aspects to it, but the social and emotional learning that we go through and get programmed with, especially in substance abuse families, it is a standalone issue that has a tremendous amount of outcroppings and comings from it. Do you have a number by chance?
26.
Okay, it's episode 26, and we'll try to have that maybe on the show notes as well when we're highlighting these shows, because we took a deep dive on this as well. And it's another one. Look, a lot of our shows play off on each other. This one plays off on the prior shows that we took deep dives on these individual things a lot. So if you have any kind of family dynamics with addiction, please know that we did deep dives on these. I know I'm brushing over them, and they can't be really easily brushed over. I'll give an attempt, though, with codependence. So, in a few liners, not a one-liner, but a few liners. Have you ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase?
Mm-hmm.
You've heard a few liners before?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I created that in the real time. Anyway, codependence can easily be defined in a few liners in my mind. That a person is codependent when they sort of become the mood of the other person. So, if the other person is well, then I feel well and happy. If the other person is not well, then I do not feel well or happy. So my efforts, energies, behaviors are designed and targeted towards making the other person well so that ultimately I'll be well. And in a nutshell, that's codependency, right? Kind of briefly, I feel like almost to a man and a woman when you're a parent, you are a certain amount of codependence.
Mm-hmm.
If your kids are hurting, oh my God.
With or without addiction,
feel
you're
it.
like that.
What's that?
With or without addiction,
Yeah,
you're like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
just part of the...
That's part of the roles that we begin to take on. If your kid is struggling and hurting, I mean, there's a piece of you that feels that and is not well. So we fall into a lot of traps of just taking care of the homework assignment for them. So, they're
No.
not going crazy.
No, we don't do that.
Shouldn't be, but we do. Not performing well on the baseball field, I'm going to talk to the coach and kind of get an angle to help him out. We just talked about last week. I'm personally in the store. Why am I buying extra gifts every Christmas? The day or two before, so that there's enough underneath the Christmas tree that my kid will be happy. Why am I doing that? These are elements of codependency, right? Times 10 when you have a substance abuse situation in your life with somebody that you care about. And oftentimes, this is the spouse. So you see the struggles, you see the changes, you see here's a keyword with addiction, progression, where it gets bigger and bigger and bigger of an issue. It doesn't ever get smaller and smaller. It gets, over the years, bigger and bigger and bigger. Even if somebody's sober for a little while, the issue grows, and you see that progression. You get sucked into behavior that you're trying to literally make them sober or drink less. Like, you will find yourself literally pouring liquor down the drain. What is that behavior?
Or you just get to the point where you just don't care anymore because you tried so much and you've just been beat over the head that it's not going to work. And
that's when things start breaking down.
Yeah.
That's later stage. That is when people end up getting divorced or just crash and burn. Mm-hmm. But long before that crash and burn thing, Adam, I'm telling you, you fall into all of these kind of weird behaviors. I mean, who pours liquor down the drain? Why would you ever do that? Why don't you just say to them, dude, honey, what are you doing? Why are you drinking again tonight?
Because that's going to start an argument.
Exactly. No talk, no feel. It's an elephant. These are rules. Absolutely. Why would you ever call somebody and tell them why you're husband, I guess we'll stay with the wife who's the addict, right? Why would you ever call somebody and tell them why your wife can't come to the event and make something up? Hey, they're sick. They're just not well at home. They're okay, but we'll see you next week. I mean, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these little behaviors that people get into, and it's because you're desperately trying to make things okay, and that ends up being codependent, right? Getting a flavor for how this runs and how this works.
Yep.
Yeah. Does that fit with some of the things you've seen with
Yep.
people and, even like spouses and stuff? Any other examples come to mind or questions or thoughts to wrap us up there?
I was kind of thinking, how can I say this? I can see there may be some denial from the other spouse too, that there actually is the issue that you think there's an issue. Because there's going to be times where, when things are just kind of starting out, somebody's just starting to have an issue that you're like, okay, they got a substance abuse problem. Then you're like, well, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something else.
Rationalizations are huge. Cover stories, minimizations are huge. There are spouses that find themselves, I am not interested in drinking. I never really drank. But because they want me to drink with them, I'm drinking most days this week. Like, why am I doing that? To make drinking normal. You'll join into behavior. I've never done cocaine. My God, I have no interest in dating cocaine. Well, my fiance uses cocaine. I guess I'm going to try cocaine.
Right.
And they end up snorting. It's like, oh, God, this is crazy. And that's actually a true story that was in my head from a recent person I'm working with, right? Like, these are real things, and you're insightfully on point. And if you're sitting out there thinking, listening to this, I wouldn't fall into these behaviors. That sounds crazy. No, when you start finding bottles hidden in your bathroom, you're going to be like, I don't have the playbook for this. Like, what am I supposed to do with, I was cleaning the toilet and I lifted up the lid and there's a liquor bottle in here. Like, how do I even have that conversation? Right?
Yeah, I was spraying the Clorox bottle and it smelled a lot like vodka.
Right? I mean,
I don't think this is Clorox.
Who even asked that question?
There was a movie this past weekend that had it on there.
That's unique.
Was it Bruise? The one with Halle Berry? She's an MMA fighter.
I got nothing.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but there's one part where, somebody was drinking and then in order to hide the bottle, they'd pour it into a spray bottle and they were like,
okay. And they were literally spraying it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It gets bad and severe after 10, 15, 20 years of a drinking career. You might be going around, taking care of your kid and getting the rubbing alcohol to fix a wound and find it gone. And you're like, where the hell? I just bought a crap load of rubbing alcohol. That's because your husband drank it. Mm-hmm. Like, again, how do you have that conversation with somebody?
I actually know somebody that happened to, yes.
Right, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it gets bizarre.
Yeah, I know somebody that
in longer, later stages, it gets bizarre.
The wife wouldn't allow alcohol in the house, so he drank rubbing alcohol.
Yeah.
I know somebody happened to.
Yeah.
And I was like, ew.
I know, right?
That's like really?
It's nasty. I couldn't imagine being in that space. But when you have addiction, that things progress and they progress. I mean, you're not doing that at 25 years old. Who the heck's going to drink rubbing alcohol at 25 years old? It's late stage addiction, some of these things. But in early stages, all of this stuff just builds and builds and builds and builds. I'm sure you've asked your alcoholic wife and complained about drinking and whatnot before. So don't think it's absolute. It's just you learn every time you do that, it's a fight. So after about 5 years of trying doing that, okay, I'll just leave it alone. I don't want to. I'll just look down. I'll just look away. So let's transition to survivor mode. Okay, this is where I may lose people, and so I'm curious for you to see if this is clear or not. It's a concept again that Claudia Black really, I think, probably created, and I heard her talk about it in a conference, and she told a story that I think perfectly described some of these characteristics of what you feel like as a kid in these situations. And this story described, what a kid's experiencing that we're going to call survivor mode. And she's honest. She is from an alcoholic dysfunctional family. That's why she's lived it, she studied it, she knows it. And she told a story about herself. So this is a story that she has shared at a conference about that demonstrates survivor mode. So Claudia and her boyfriend were sitting in her living room, okay? You can picture this living room. She's sitting on the couch. Now, she's in her parents' house, and she's a teenager-ish, I guess. And the parents own a bar, so the bar's next door, and they live in their house, and, so it's convenient business, whatever. And so her brother and sister, whoever, is also in the living room sitting in a chair and whatever. So they're just hanging out there watching TV. All of a sudden, boom, this door slams open, front door, and this big guy presents himself and says, hey, where's the bathroom at? I need a bathroom. And Claudia looks at him and points over here. It's like, well, it's right over there, and they're looking around like, who's the dude? And, he comes out of the bathroom and he walks back through the living room and leaves, right? They start watching TV again. And that's it. That's the story. So the boyfriend, of course, is like, edging her, like, hey, Claudia, who's that? He's got questions, right? Who's that guy? Do we need to lock the door? Like, should we call somebody? Are we safe? Is this okay? Does this happen very often? Like, you want to go to my house? Instead? So who's in survivor mode? The boyfriend or Claudia? Interesting pause and thought.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to not knowing who the guy was. Was she in survivor mode by just acting like it wasn't a big deal, or is he in survivor mode like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, she is in survivor mode.
So who was the person?
Right? Doesn't matter. It's a stranger. He's probably some drunk in a bar. Here's what happens in survivor mode. You go from one instance to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and you become really street smart, really pretty wise, right? The boyfriend's in panic mode. He's tripping out. Like I said, those questions. He wants to know hey, do I need to pull out my gun? I mean,
right.
Do we need to track this guy down? Is this a police call? He's not in survivor mode. He's in like a panic mode, or at least an upset space, right? Whereas she's just like, no, we're good. She is numbed out. She is not worried.
So that's what survivor mode is.
Survivor mode is being in a mode where you assess super quick. She went in panic mode and out of panic mode like really quick. Here's a guy's probably drunk. Guy needs to ask him about bathroom. Probably goes to the bathroom. He's probably going to leave. Oh, look, he left. We're good. All right, let's watch TV. That's it. Just like that.
Not deadbolt the door.
Don't even worry about the door.
Until after he leaves.
Door's not even a problem. It's, if another situation pops up, we'll deal with it. But this is fine. This is normal. It's no big deal. Okay. That guy just, that was Johnny. Maybe she even knows, like, he gets in fights outside. He never does anything in the house. It's no big deal. But, he's drunk, so I had to make sure that was the case. They are on point. They are scanning. They know what the dangers are before you and me and Neil probably ever even move. We don't even know what to do. I mean, we're ready for, we're putting our fists up ready to fight the guy or, cause more of a problem or literally call the police on a ridiculous situation, right? Survivor mode just gets into your DNA almost. Like you live it. You numb out the emotions when a situation is done, essentially because you know there's going to be another situation next week or next month, even probably tomorrow, maybe. I never really know what I'm coming home to, so I'm ready for it. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm calm. It's pressure. It's weird. It's scary, but it's fine. That's survivor mode. It's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem clear? I'm really curious to tune into what you're hearing and if that makes sense.
Yes, but it still seems really weird.
Yeah. Go further with that.
That's
probably why I lose therapy.
It seems really weird, somebody, oh yeah, hey, just bathroom's that way. That just seems weird.
That you would be calm after it.
Not so much calm, but just the fact that happened, and I can see me. Somebody opens the door, I'm like, you getting out,
right?
because I'd be worried about, protecting the family or whatever.
Right. Yeah, this is not an okay event.
Right.
This is not safe. This causes feelings in me that I don't like and I'm not going to tolerate.
But I can imagine a woman would be different. I mean, a guy comes in, I'd be like almost like a bull.
Yeah.
Get this person out of the house as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, you got to think about it. Is Claudia going to be able to go to her parents and say anything about this? Is she going to talk about with, my dad, like, hey, Dad, I was really upset when one of your patrons kind of came in the house and, we locked the door or something. Like, this is jacked up. He's going to be like, oh, Claudia, you're fine. Hey, you're fine, baby. It's, he's going to minimize it.
I wonder if that had happened before.
Probably. Yeah.
So that's another factor.
Yeah. It's nutty stuff is normalized. It is some of what you can happen. And I want people to understand too. We're not talking about how do I want to put that? Like, some of these things can sound dramatic when you really think about it, but it is when something is normalized, like, it's really not a big deal. We cope with it, and it's just the way of life. And sometimes there aren't dramatic events like some big burly guy running into the living room. I come home and found my drunk dad making out with, mom on the couch. I don't know. Is that weird? Every kid's walked in on their parents sometime or two, maybe. I don't know, but that's crazy if that happens, and particularly if sexual activity has progressed. Mm-hmm. But that happens. So it's like, oh, well, and here's the crazy thing. The kid doesn't realize that's so abnormal. Like I said, it gets normalized. They just realize, well, mom was just kissing, and they were just, ew, but they stopped when I walked into the room. But again, when that's happening regularly, or maybe you walk in on an affair, that's more dramatic. Mm-hmm. But the emotions, even with like just the simpler situation, like I'm trying to describe, like, there's basic situations that are emotionally jacked up, and there's dramatic situations that are emotionally jacked up. And I don't want people to minimize if they're seeing things that are a little jacked up, that it's just the small stuff, because the small stuff leads to a little bit bigger stuff and a little bit bigger stuff. And then you get to this dramatic crap, 10 years.
Because you kind of get used to it.
Right, yeah. And it grows, remember? Mm-hmm. So if you're, 2 years old and your mom or dad starts getting into addiction behavior, time you're 12 years old, that's 10 years of progression. Mm-hmm. Meaning their addiction's getting worse. Their drinking is probably increasing. Their behavior's getting more loudly ridiculous. I know of a person I've worked with that, came home from work and had, gotten sick all over himself. Like, that's not normal. But he just needed to run up and get a shower. It's the kids didn't even know it. It's just the spouse that knew it. It is so many ways that this stuff just blows into a family's life cycle that it's, in some ways, it just kind of breaks my heart. So let me see. Some of these things might relate to codependent behavior, but I did a thought process of thinking, what are daily behaviors that can be a part of this. I mentioned hiding alcohol, dumping alcohol and hiding alcohol and having this weird component of normal stuff that you just start finding crap in your house. The kids. Why would I find bottles, little mini bottles, right? Those little mini bottles are everywhere. Mm-hmm. Put my hand down in the couch and, there's mini bottles. So
it might not have been the parent. It might have been the kid hiding it.
Well, it was the parent. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
The parent, literally, the kid, are finding little mini bottles in the couch, or tossed into the bathroom in the drawer where nobody looks. And I was looking for toothpaste, and I find this stuff. Like, that's a little simple situation, but again, who does that? Irrational irritabilities. is a daily experience. Not every day, I'm saying, but Mommy, why were you acting so upset when you were outside on the phone? Well, she was trashed and in a rage.
That goes both ways.
Well, what do you
About
mean?
the unreliable. Oh, I'm sorry. About the irrational stuff about getting mad or whatever. I can see that going both ways because like when somebody has an addiction, substance abuse addiction, and the next day or hours down the later on hours down the road, and they don't realize they were being a certain way, the other person remembers how they were being, so they might be a little irritable or very
Absolutely.
irritable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then
Okay, I
and
see your
then
point.
and then the person that actually has the problem using stuff may not understand why the other person,
What's your problem?
like get away from me. Why? Oh, why, honey? Get away from me.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up. You're right. A regular part of survival mode is as the teenager gets upset. And, well, we didn't talk about this at all, and I can tell you right now we're not going to have time to. Talking about the roles of family that play out in family dynamics. That's in the episode whatever we had. Well, I have it here. That was in the episode 64 that we took. One of those roles is a scapegoat. And this is the personality in the family that basically they're the troubled kid. And they're angry. I mean, they are angry for obviously all kinds of reasons, and they act that out, and they go get in trouble. They get into fights, and they go do, they just get in trouble. They don't care as much about school, and you're right. It's because, frankly, they just had a bunch of shit happen to them all their life, and they're pissed off about it. So it does go both ways, and that's potentially a part of the survival mode idea. I wrote personality changes. If you're a kiddo and you kind of get an idea when daddy, if he's the alcoholic, if daddy comes home, you kind of get a gauge, just like Claudia did with the guy coming into the living room. Mm-hmm. You gauge daddy. Oh, this is one of those nights. We'll just go play PlayStation up in the room. We'll just avoid. Or daddy comes home and, he seems okay. Oh, daddy's had 2 or 3 drinks. We can still talk to him. Can you help me out with the homework? I'm kind of tripping out about this math problem, Dad. What you got? You do math at work, right? Well, because he's only had 3 beers. And you know how many beers he had, by the way. That's survival mode. You see how intricate it can be in their life? That's a good point that I just stumbled upon. How many kids count how many beers their parents have? I can't remember doing that. I think I can honestly say I never did that. Never had a reason to. Now, I might get a little bit giggly if, Daddy's a little bit trashed at the wedding when we're driving home, and Mommy said, "Hey, Daddy, I'm driving." And he's like, "Oh, okay, you could drive, Now I'm laughing about that as a kid. Well, Dad, how much did you drink? Those things are normal, but I'm not looking through the course of an evening, we've hit number 6, we need to shut it down.
I think it was 2.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right, yeah, 2 50-ouncers. Unreliable realities that develop. As I said, trust, you just do not know, so you might not even ask about the math health problem. That's all part of survivor mode. The no-talk rules that develop, I mentioned that with Claudia. Tendency to lose oneself because of a lack of development, right? Even with expression of what you might want and what you might enjoy. I find what I mean by this idea is that you just don't develop a concept of yourself. It gets lost. It kind of as a part of the codependence, because kids can be codependent as well. It isn't just totally the spouse. They have elements. You kind of figure out, I'm not even going to ask about stuff. It's fine, whatever I get for my birthday. I don't have a particular restaurant I want to go out to, wherever you want to go. You kind of lose core development years about what it is that makes you you. Because what makes you you is I need to figure out how I can be safe in this environment. It's kind of sad. It's the chronicity of this stuff is a bit overwhelming. So I'm going to switch to the next no, I'm not. Sum us up here with what you hear here in a minute, and then we need to get to how do we get out of survival mode. That's where we're going to focus on next. But there are some advantages to this I want to point out. This is kind of cool. And when I work with people that are a part of ACOA, $10 I'll give you if you know what ACOA stands for, and I mean it. Don't tell them, Neil.
ACOA.
You got 3 seconds. 3, 2,
No.
1. All right. I would have given you $10.
Yeah.
Adult Children of Alcoholics. It's a thing. It's a national group. They actually have ACOA meetings, and you can identify.
I should have
with that
guessed.
now.
Should have guessed
right?
something.
$10, man.
Adult children of.
Yeah, you would. You got to know. So, the group, will be able to tell you like they can handle problems. They are problem solvers. You will see people in corporate worlds, in administration. I mean, they're very giving and caring towards other people. They're ready to, some of that codependent stuff. Like, you could be a really likable person and really successful at your job because you have lived with this stuff and you know what it is. And I'm actually going to give you an idea. Neil, you might not know this guy. And I'm debating in my head. Yeah, it's okay to say because I think he's been public about it. Remember Tom Duda? Yeah. We chronicled him on our show, and we had him on our show. Mr. CEO at what did he tell you? You remember 1925, he was a CEO, corporate CEO that because he was in survivor mode and he was absolutely aware of how to progress his life. So kind of has some advantages. Has really got some good things that can be built into your core personality. So it's really not all bad. Plus also, I wanted to mention that well, I already mentioned that. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned how these things play out through the course of a life cycle, and I strongly suspect that we've talked about abandonment and engulfment on the show. I know you know what that is. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that on the show and off and on. If somebody's on the engulfment camp and they have this survival mode kicking and swirling around that as well, can you imagine how locked down people are emotionally? It's like just you will never know what they're thinking. They will never know when they're rattled, and I think a lot of that is like the CEO exec kind of type people and type situations. Very, very successful, but boy, emotionally compartmentalized and shut down pretty hardcore. And again, I think our buddy Tom is a good example of that. So wrap us up, and we want to get on to the segment of how do we get out of this stuff and what do we do. But hearing good stuff, making sense, where are we at? Where's your brain?
I'm curious about the survival mode thing.
What do you mean?
But as far as getting out of it, I'm curious what's your advice to the listeners or is going to be as far as getting out of survival mode? Because as you already said, the survival mode is something that you carry on.
Definitely.
So I'm wondering where you're going with this as far as the getting out of survival mode. Because the way I see it is part of survival mode is even after you've gotten past this.
Yeah.
You're still going to take it with you. So I don't really know if you can ever really get out of it, but maybe you can get out of the harmful.
Yeah, you're not at risk anymore. I think you're on point there. Yeah. Does it seem daunting?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is. I mean, you're right.
Especially for a child.
Yeah, well, now we're all grown up, though. And now we might have a belief that I'm good. Like you just said, it's not going to affect me anymore. By golly, I'm not going to let my mommy hurt me anymore. I mean,
right.
We're all grown up, and mom might not even have a relationship with her anymore because she's just a piece of shit, and I don't want to deal with her anymore. To be real, but yeah, it's in you,
right?
You've carried it into your life. It's a part of what your life experience.
Well, if you're not having a relationship with somebody, then that's just evidence that it is part of you still.
There's a lot of resentment. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of twisted feelings and emotions, and you might not, you might actually still subscribe to the idea of don't trust, don't talk, don't feel. You might not have ever put it in that language, but, this is why I have a hard time trusting my spouse. They ain't never really drank a drop in their life, but I've always had trust issues. Well,
that makes it hard.
It could trace right back to this stuff we've been talking about, I just don't really deal with feelings. That's, well, okay. I mean, but that tracks back to these things we're talking about. So you never really even thought of the family rule was don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, but it's playing out in your adult life, and people sometimes are completely on the unawares. So, yeah, you're ready to get out of it? You're intrigued enough?
Well, the part of not dealing with feelings is dealing with feelings. That's not dealing with it is actually dealing with feelings.
In a twisted sort of way,
It's a
you're
way.
right.
Not
Shutting
dealing
them
with
down.
feelings is a way of dealing with some type of feeling.
I'm an excellent shutter downer. I'm an excellent compartmentalizer. I'm an excellent emotion compressor. And yeah, you're right. Which, by the way, takes a lot of energy to do. So you're very right. And I've thought about that. I see what you're saying. You're dealing with feelings and emotions like more than most people do.
Like, why are you always thinking of the bad things? Because I've always dealt with the bad things.
Yeah.
Why are you thinking the worst case scenario? Because I've always dealt with the worst
Just
case
ready
scenario.
for it. You know, I want to be prepared. Why don't want to get caught off guard? You know, well, why can't you relax? Just chill out. We're boyfriend, girlfriend sitting on the couch watching TV. Why are you on edge?
I am relaxed. What are you talking about?
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do we get out of this stuff? I brainstormed a little bit on this. And I really, really like the first one that I came to when I was thinking about it because it's really hard to do, but if you can learn and have permission or give yourself permission to speak the truth, right? That breaks the silence and gets you out of just surviving. Speaking the truth as best as you could perceive it, as best as you can see it, as best as you can express it, in as much as you can. This is what I really see, honey, talking about now. You know what? Let's almost transition this. Now we're not talking about the kid with the parents anymore. Now we're going to talk about it in the context of ACOA. I will not give you any money, but what does ACOA stand for?
Alcoholic. I listened to you.
Adult Children.
Adult. I thought you said alcoholic children.
ACOA. Adult
Okay.
Children of Alcoholics.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's not rubbing off on me, man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's all right.
He's going to punch me later on.
Nah, it's all right. It's all right.
I get hit every time after I do the show. Can I reveal that? Would that be an okay thing to reveal?
Sure. That's how I deal with this.
It's
That's how I deal with this.
It's not true, y'all. Adam's way too kind to that. Okay, so what we're going to do is ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics. We're now thinking of these people grown up. And they've got their own lives. They may be married. They may not be married. They may have kids. They may not have kids. But these are ways to kind of manage this now as you're possibly even still in survival mode. In fact, probably are, unbeknownst to you, still in survival mode as an adult. These are things that we want to do to get out of it. So speaking the truth, boy, that could be hard to do. But when you really see something and you're really feeling something or you're really observing something, dude, you are breaking every rule about no talk rules that you can think of if you try to do this. I want to demonstrate how difficult this is to do or try to convey how difficult this is to do. But if you can get courage built to really begin sharing with your spouse, this is what I really think. You're breaking the no-talk rule, and that is just not done in these families. It's just not done. But if you can do it a little bit and then a little bit more, you are absolutely healing yourself just by being honest and sharing the truth about what it is that you see and what you observe. The next thing, I don't even know how do we get into the trying to be brief on, boundary setting, setting boundaries. Say yes when you mean yes and say no when you mean no and really mean both of them when you say them. That's the simplest version I can get to in saying boundary setting. But this is a huge, huge component. Adam, can you even imagine, having had our conversation for the last hour or so, how many boundaries are crossed when you're a kid in an alcoholic dysfunctional family?
Oh, yes.
It's profound.
I'm sitting here looking at the things that you had put on here, and it almost, not all of them, but some of them are actually breaking the kind of the things that was said from Claudia Black. It's like you're doing the exact opposite.
What do you mean? Oh, when...
Instead of don't talk, you talk.
Yeah.
Instead of don't feel, you do feelings.
Yeah. Essentially, in simplistic nature, yeah, you want to reverse course on some of the patterns and behaviors that you've kind of done. Yeah, no, it's a good observation and probably very true. Yeah, you're saying that because of C, right? Talk, 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 break the no talk rules, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that is so hard to do. But yeah, you do. You want to reverse course. I said find oneself almost opposite of daily learned realities, right? Ask the simple questions. What is it that I really like? What is it that I really want? Those are tough questions to ask. But if you're going to come out of survivor mode, this numbed out, non-talking, non-feeling state that you've fallen into for the last 20, 30 years, 40 years, then you're really going to struggle with those questions. What is it I really love about my life? What do I really want? Just because that hasn't been the focus forever. So those are really, really good questions. I mean, here's a tip, I guess. If you're an ACOA, right? Understand that shame-based behaviors are strong. Talk about it and ask those two simple questions. What is it that I really want? What is it that I really like? I almost feel like if you could trace through those three things, understand you have shame-based behaviors probably. It's important to talk about it and ask yourself these two simple questions. What do I really like? What do I really want? You have made headway. You're going to make hay coming out of survivor mode. I did that actually fresh off my brain that way, just thinking about all this.
It was sharp. I liked it.
Lean out to others. You want to come out of survivor mode? You need to begin thinking about, like, what can I do to reach out and lean out to talk to? Again, there's that talk word, right? Do not, right, it's the opposite of Claudia Black. Invite people into your home. Now, you're 20, 30, 40 years old, so you're not going to have a sleepover. Unless you're dating and you just want to hook up, and then you can ask somebody over. Don't get me wrong, I get it. But what I'm saying is, just like the little kid would go to other people's homes for sleepovers, bring kids to your home to sleep over. Meaning, let people in to what you're thinking. God, Lee, how difficult is that under normal pretenses? Can you imagine the shame-based, I'm bad, I've done something wrong, whether I realize it or not, but this is the way I feel, so why the hell am I going to let somebody know, me? Well, a little bit at a time, as much as you're able to, lean out to people. Find them that you can relate to and talk to and connect with. Don't be alone. Don't be alone.
This almost reminds me of some of the aspects on the show we did. I think it was the Lost 10 Years or whatever.
Lost Decade, yeah.
Lost Decade, okay.
Yeah.
The stuff we talked about, like getting out of your comfort zone, doing something different. I hear you talking about kind of along the same lines.
It's interesting, Adam. You're right, because it's emotion management skills to a certain extent, and they do, it'd be an interesting thing to kind of just take and maybe I'll do this as a bit of a research project or whatever. I mean, take all of the last segments of our shows and just bleed them all together and see, like, what does that really look like? Because, yeah, you're right, there is a lot of overlap, and particularly with alcohol dysfunctional families, there's a lot of hurt that you're recovering from. So there are some overlap. How when kids are going through funerals or they've got, a loss or something, or, when parents are getting divorced, we tell the kids and people really realize, oh, yeah, you got to make sure the kid knows it's not their fault, right? Well, that's a profound reality that it's hard to convince the person that it really isn't their fault. Now, theoretically, in their frontal cortex, in their thinking, they'll agree very quickly. Oh, yeah, I get it. It's not my fault. Yeah. But in the spirit, in the emotion, in the limbic system, deep inside the brain, when you're feeling these things, you don't have a clue that it's not your fault.
Like I did something that led to it.
Yes. They were yelling at me. They were yelling at me or about me. Remember Good Will Hunting? Did you ever see that movie? Mm-hmm. Remember when Robin Williams was repeating the name Damon, what's his name? The actor, Damon.
If you wouldn't ask me.
Matthew David. Yeah, I know.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. Thank you. Matt. When Robin
I
Williams.
bet he was getting ready to say it.
He was.
He was getting ready to say it.
When Robin Williams was talking to Matt Damon in their therapy experience, and he said it's not your fault about the sexual abuse, and he's like, yeah, I get it, and they went back and forth, 4, 5, 6 times, like Robin saying, no, really, it's not your fault. And I loved that scene. It was so powerful because it broke into the emotional realm where Matt Damon touched base with the emotional feeling of, holy crap, I really did think it was my fault and I didn't even know it. So, sounds simple, really, but realize this is not your fault nor your creation. Celebrate what survival mode helped you actually get through life and realize that it can be recalled. You can get well emotionally and healthy-wise and whatever. When you need these skill sets, you can bring them back, because it taught you a lot of really cool things. You can be an awesome CEO. You can be an awesome friend, but we want to relearn some of these things, but you can recall them, when you need to or want to. Combat the excessive need for acceptance from others. ... I wrote, and I'm reminding myself, by accepting self, right? How easy do you think it is when you've had shame attack after shame attack after shame attack, month after month, year after year, to actually accept yourself?
That'd be difficult because someone might think there's something wrong with them. That it's kind of like the thing we said a minute ago. You might think in the back of your mind, well, maybe I did something led to it. Maybe I'm the cause of it. So, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, you might not even know that you don't accept yourself. And I know that sounds psychological babble, woo-woo, weird stuff, but it's true.
Woo-woo, weird stuff.
Psychological babble, woo-woo, weird stuff that you don't even know that you don't accept yourself. Yeah, right? Because these things are just they're automatic. This is automatic thought processing in some regards. You don't even think about this stuff. It's just the way you experience things. So check in with the fear of others in life. The fear may be the result of anticipating fear rather than something that's actually to be fearful of. It's a little bit of a cognitive strategy. What I'm trying to say here when I'm saying, check in with the fear about other people, you might be anticipating things going wrong, kind of like you said, I guess in a logical way. Why do you always see the negative in things? Well, because that's what I've kind of experienced. Tune into that fear and combat that fear so that you're not stuck in that kind of a space, right? Then I just said combat shame. I said, goodness, it's a huge part of recovery. And I'm not even going to try to mention that because I really want you to tune into episode 165, and we did a whole segment on just coming out of shame.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that episode. Shame sucks. I'm going to have to watch that.
But I'm going to tell you, this is a huge part of what people are experiencing from these family systems. And the last one that was on my brainstorm anyway was, listen, I use it a lot in therapy. I'm sure you've heard the serenity prayer, right? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Man, to me, that is a profound set of wise, thoughtful, and really on-point concepts that we struggle with just in everyday life. From a substance abuse family, we try to control things we cannot control way too much, right? I'm aware of the time. We're going to take ourselves out of here. Adam, in your brain moving around, like I said, I'm kind of aware of the idea that I can lose people when I talk about survivor mode in therapy. And in years past, I did this in 95 when I was just starting. So, years and years and years ago, I used to do more of this direct teaching in therapy than I do now. I hardly do it all now. How am I doing? How does this sound? Has this given you a good, broad, at least, understanding of survival mode and what you go through and how that sticks with you?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is it confusing a little bit?
Just at the beginning, because I didn't quite understand where you were going with about the survival mode, because my mind was thinking different things. I guess it's kind of almost like the not knowing the terminology thing, which I'm thinking about. You said that some of your colleagues kind of would get lost when you were talking about it or whatever. That's
Yeah,
that's a whole different thing there because they know
is.
the term, but for me, not knowing what exactly you're going with, because I was thinking different things.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot over the years, and fundamentally, I almost feel like it needs to be renamed. I never really cared to think about what I would rename it to, but where I think people really get tripped up or weirded out about is survival mode means you're taking an action, you're doing something to survive, and instead, if you think of it, a lot of it is like it's all internalized, and you're just numbing out and not doing things is kind of and that's a weird. Like the word and the actual behavior is a kind of a weird connection, I think. So maybe we just need to rename it. All right. So listen, I'm gonna tune us out of here. We need to get out. I screwed up my time clock, so I don't know if I ran over a little bit on this one as well, but it's fine because I would have anyway. Like if you're listening to the show and you're still tuned in, I'm really glad because I want you to understand. There are so many people that are in the ACOA category, adult children of alcoholics, and you just are not alone. And the things that you probably learned in an ACOA circle in your family aren't true. They're lies. They're not the way that typically people experience life. And so I want you to reach out. Al-Anon is a great group to get into. That's for anybody that has alcohol, drug family, friends, even anybody that's in your life that you have observed with this stuff. I want you to reach out. I want you to not be alone. I want you to realize you haven't done anything wrong. Shame does suck and you can deal with it. So we have some resources. Check it out. Contact at throughatherapisteyes.com, an email to reach out, throughatherapisteyes.com. This is one that I don't want you to be alone, especially in the holidays when we have a lot of tough things kind of going on. So promise we'll have a little bit more of an upbeat message maybe, than the stress stuff we deal with around families. Happy holiday season, and we're going to talk to you soon next week. Take care.